I should say good afternoon. Uh, well, I'm going to go pretty quickly through this because you all had a long and exciting session. I've really had the pleasure of sitting through the uh, four presentations this morning, and I've gained a lot from it. Um, Firstly, congratulations Academy, congratulations Ratna Sansad. Um, it's really great to be here talking to my seniors, the people who have built me and created so many students, and uh, this is a small image of my fourth year project at the Academy of Architecture. I almost lost my seat when I did this project because just the research work that I did for this project made me miss a lot of classes, lose a lot of attendance, and but still I'm very proud of this project because I used to love Buckminster Fuller. I'm an engineer's son. I'm very proud of that, and I try to incorporate engineering and architecture in my design solutions. I'm evolving. I kind of every 4 or 5 years I kind of throw away what I have done before. So don't be surprised if next year I start rejecting the work that I have proudly presented to you today. This is something I did in college. I do keep this project because I love Buckminster Fuller's work, and I also love the work of Anthony Gaudi, and was very inspired by it. And again, a project from my college days, a model which I've kind of kept, and something that's kind of made by me, so I enjoyed that. Of course, someone mentioned Vishnu Joshi, so I thought I should reciprocate with a picture of my guru, Joseph Anand Stein, and that's basically because he incorporated the values, human values. He also brought in craftsmanship and of course architecture and structure together. Unfortunately, I will not in this presentation get into the aspects of detailing, which is very close to my heart. I would like to instead concentrate on a particular subject which I thought would be close to students, because I think one thing that students have to contribute to us is their mind, their free mind which can think of concepts. And I thought, let me talk about concepts on the drawing board and how they translate into a final building, okay, and how your mind can move on when you move out of school, okay, into the real field of architecture. So I will concentrate on concepts, but I must tell you that I worked with Mr. Stein for a totally different reason. I worked with him to learn how to actually translate concepts into reality, because he was an expert, okay, at actually executing architectural works. And this actually is the work of Vishnu Joshi, you know. And I, being an engineer's son, joined Stein because I wanted to understand how structures work and how single-folded membrane structures work. So I studied in this Mr. Stein's library. A book was being published on his work, and so I studied all these different kind of plate form, and some of these drawings have been reproduced by me. I loved his first works, the SR factory with the hyperbolic paraboloid forms. And then as my final project with Mr. Stein, he was very elderly then, okay, and I sat down with him and I worked what is called a factory-made factory. So it was a factory that was supposed to be actually produced in a factory. We were fascinated by these ideas because, you know, Mr. Stein used to keep telling me, and I'm glad to see so much good architecture, but he used to keep telling me then that actually the quality of construction that he got from contractors in 1962, 67, when he started building his first works here, okay, was much better than the quality of construction that he got, okay, towards his last days. I hope things change. I worked with different contractors and got different results. So we'll see how that marches on. After I moved out of academy, after I moved out of the laboratory that Mr. Stein's work was, I walked into Europe, and I spent a lot of time in Paris, but I also admired a lot two buildings. This building, which is basically the Georges Pompidou Center. I hope you can see this pointer here. That's the Georges Pompidou Center. Okay, it's Well, many people think it's an ugly building, but it's actually a very, very radical building. It, according to me, changed the face of architecture in Europe. It brought a new concept into architecture, which was not just the kind of conventional aesthetic with which we were used to working in architecture. On the other hand, more sophisticated high-tech buildings like those of Foster's, which came up. And of course, one of the buildings which is really dear to me is the glass pyramid at the Louvre. I find it very interesting that IMP actually made a kind of an opposition with respect to something so traditional, and yet use such a traditional form to make that opposition. A pyramid, a glass pyramid in an ancient building. Going on, I say I'm an engineer's son, but then what do I have to contribute in terms of architectural engineering? What do I want to position where do I want to position myself? The George Pompidou Center has something called the gerberet. It's a fascinating form. It's a fascinating junction. It's just one junction and one detail, which actually symbolizes the character of this building. This gerberet was actually designed by an engineer in conjunction with Renzo Piano and Richard Rogers at that time. But the reason for this design was that they actually wanted which was structurally true, but they also wanted something that was actually handcrafted. It was like wrought iron, as against making something which was just kind of cast in a factory. So what happens is the gerberet that you see out here is actually holding this entire building facade together, as you can see. And it actually was, the research that went into this was phenomenal. In fact, there's an entire book, written by Pete Smith on the way this gerberet was designed. And I thought that, if we bring this kind of character into our architecture, we actually harmonize architecture and engineering, it will lead to perhaps a very, very interesting kind of a practice. So I came back to India. I joined a firm which is called Stoop Consultants. I'll tell you a little more about it later. And one of the projects where I tried to bring some of these ideas together was this particular project, which is in Chennai. It's actually, I start this project with this image of the palm tree because it's fascinating, because the only thing there was on this site I didn't have any of this blue water actually. All I had was some palm trees, virgin land, and the client said, okay, that's your context. And I'm a big one for context and trying to draw some kind of a story or narrative out of the site, the client, and the existing situation. So, inspired by that palm tree, we actually considered a kind of a structural system. Now, I must tell you one thing. The kind of architecture I do is normally designed and built within 7 to 12 months. So this design that you see out here was conceived in about 7 days, was tendered out in about 21 days, and then built in about 7 months. So there are two things happening in this architecture. One is that there's a process of design involved, because you have to deliver the product in time. And the second is there's a process of construction involved, because you actually have to build this entire project, in a record period of time. So this is the project. Actually, what you see out here, are these kind of palm tree space frames at the top, which are basically holding a floor. This is the upper floor out here, which is completely free. It's naturally ventilated. It's actually even free of floor space index, but that's a kind of a byproduct of the idea. But just notice the structural system. Because we had to be off the ground quickly, inspired by a palm tree, this is a double cantilevered structural system which kind of grows out as it goes up. So you have these floor plates branching out from this central court. Now this is an IT complex. IT buildings have to be very deep to be efficient. Well, we can question that theory actually. In another project I've questioned that very theory itself. But that is the conventional thinking. So how do you make a deep floor plate, have light and ventilation? Well, the concept of having light wells. These light wells also help for circulation, of air, because they allow the air to go right through the floor plate and up through the